And my good friend and colleague, Carl Wolfson, is in our studio. Carl and I were on KPOJ together in back in the day in Portland, Oregon. And Carl, you're doing your own show now.
That's right.
In Portland. And tell us about your show, first of all.
Well, it's great to see your studio in Washington, and we were alongside each other for 6 years at KPOJ, and I think a lot of people know that on November 9th of last year, Clear Channel flipped KPOJ from Progressive Talk to sports, which is, Fox Sports, which Premier syndicates and Clear Channel owns. Not a single local guest on the show. It's just 24-hour schlock. And I went off, started a Kickstarter with your help and others, and we raised $55,000 in 5 days, and we're back up on the air at carlwolfson.com. And we will be moving, we'll keep our internet show at carlwolfson.com, so you got to plug in twice. And you and I will be on X-Ray FM radio, hopefully beginning in January, 91.1 FM, low power FM in Portland, Oregon. I know everyone wants to hear your voice again, Tom.
I am looking forward to that.
Portland.
And for our listeners who may not know, and in fact, actually, usually it's misspelled. How are you spelling Wolfson for your URL, for your website, or do you have both?
It's Carl Wolfson, Wolfson.
Okay.
Actually, you're one of the few people who knows that the original spelling was German, Sohn.
Right.
But the H would just confuse people. Right. Wolfson, Wolfsahan. Yeah. I have a list of my misspelling. So I took the H out, the hell with the H, and it's carlwolfson.com. And I just want to put a plug that you're going to be on our show next Tuesday at 7:30 Pacific time to talk about your new book. You're going to be at Powell's on Burnside on the 22nd with your new book, and I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
and we miss you.
Well, thank you, Carl.
And everything is great in Portland.
Yeah,
in fact, things are so good at Whole Foods, Tom. They're selling so much, the only thing left on the shelves is gluten. That's how good it is in Portland, Oregon. The economy's coming back. That's right.
I'm in trouble.
People miss you.
So tell me about politics in the Northwest, in the Pacific Northwest. Patty Murray, for example, is in the chair of this joint conference committee. Her and Paul Ryan, that are supposed to work out a budget. Patty Murray, who ran as the mom in sneakers, and that was originally a slur against her, and she took that and ran with it, and has won, I believe, 2 elections, maybe 3, 6-year elections as senator from Washington
I think she's won her third.
Yeah. And at the same time, the right-wingers, they've knocked down this GMO thing, and then there's this guy named Art Robinson, and I've told this story on the air before, and I'll bet 3/4 of our listeners thought I was doing satire.
No.
So tell us,
Well, the good part is that both Washington and Oregon have not voted for a Republican for president since 1984. Neither state has voted for a Republican governor since 1982. So we have good, solid, progressive organizations in the state. As far as the GMO thing, 522 initiative, it was the same script they followed with Prop 37 in California last year. Just the label, the GMOs in Washington had a huge lead. Then here comes the Monsanto money, and they confused people. They were confusing people about what would be labeled, what would not. They claimed that it would drive people out of business just to relabel. And it lost the same way it lost in California. We're trying to look at that in Oregon because it should be on the ballot soon there and learn some lessons from that.
The simple rebuttal to that is this is no different than when they made them label how much sodium is in things.
Sure.
When they made them label how many calories are in things.
Right.
It
should help the business.
None of those labeling requirements put anybody out of business.
Yes. In fact, if you go back to, of course, the Meatpacking Act or the FDIC, the meatpacking industry at the beginning of the 20th century railed against that until they found out it helped their business. It gave consumers confidence in their product. The same with the FDIC. If people realized that banks had rules and regulations, they'd be more apt to put the money in the bank. So, again, it's the big moneyed interests, and we expect the same in Oregon. I have to say that the SeaTac vote was the most significant vote.
Now, SeaTac is a suburb. It's actually the name of a town that is suburban Seattle.
That's right, where mainly airport workers and hotel workers, they voted to raise the minimum wage to $15, and along with that was paid sick days, which passed in Portland, Oregon this year unanimously. Wow. And that is a model for the rest of the country. Now, Washington and Oregon have the 2 highest state minimum wages in the country. Washington is $9.19 an hour. Oregon is $8.95 an hour, and we index that to inflation. Right. And that's low compared to what it should be federally, but it's still and the result is all of these restaurants that claim they're going to be leaving the state or put out of business by an increase in the minimum wage, they're still around. In fact, the knowledge that we raise it periodically, every time the index comes out, gives business owners some planning, some surety.
Sure.
So it works for them, and they've turned out liking it. So,
Amazing.
we do have progressive, but this guy,
Except for Art Robinson.
Yeah. Now, this guy ran against Peter DeFazio, and you have Peter on the show.
Yeah, last time Peter was on was just a month ago.
The greatest liberal in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And
Yeah.
Peter's the 4th Congressional District of Oregon, the dean of the Oregon delegation. And in 2010, this guy, Art Robinson, who is a survivalist, he sells these homeschooling kits to make a living. He has said that public education should be abolished, that it's a form of torture. He has published, he is a scientist by trade and has published tracts which say that the nuclear waste problem, the way to deal with it is sprinkle it in very small amounts all around us. And that's the way to deal with it.
Didn't he at one time propose that home insulation in the walls be made from radioactive waste?
Right.
Or peppered with radioactive waste? Right. Because A, it would get you used to the radiation, and B, there would be a small amount of heat produced by the radioactive decay.
Right. I mean, he's got a little cottage industry going there. You're right, Tom. So basically, Peter drummed him in 2010, drummed him worse in 2012, and then this is the state of the Republican Party in Oregon. It's so bad. They named this year Art Robinson as the chair of the Republican Party. That's how in disarray it is in the Beaver State. And now he's been...
If I can add, Peter DeFazio created a website called whoisartrobinson.com,
right,
which is hysterical. Anyhow,
very funny. And simply has clips of Art Robinson saying the things that you and I have been talking about. Right. So he just reveals himself, and it's a little work, just a little editing, and to get the clips up. But now Art Robinson, as of last week, says he's going to make a third run at Peter. Mm-hmm. And I guess the Republican Party will be out of a crazy chair. They'll have to find a crazier one. But the only thing that makes it worth talking about beyond the macabre nature of it is this guy gets big money from hedge fund managers.
Right. There's a couple of billionaires in Washington, D.C., or in New York City,
State, actually,
who were very, very upset with Peter DeFazio for trying to raise, proposing the stat tax, basically, a transaction tax and also trying to raise the capital gains tax rate.
Right, absolutely. So in addition to that race, and I don't think Peter's in any danger, the marquee race in Oregon next year will be our Senator Jeff Merkley, who has just been the model progressive senator for a freshman year.
Yeah.
I was at a fundraiser with Jeff not long ago and told us that before Ted Kennedy died, Ted Kennedy asked different senators to carry different parts of his legacy. Mm-hmm. And he gave Jeff Merkley ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, and it's finally passed the Senate. And I would like to ask Greg Walden, who's our one Republican in Congress, you supported ENDA in 2007. What's your statement on it now? If you're John Boehner's top lieutenant, Greg Walden, ask the Speaker to bring up ENDA in the House if you're listening to this show.
Yeah.
People in Oregon should call Greg Walden's office and say, you supported ENDA in 2007. Do you still support it? And if so, why won't your Speaker bring it to the floor of the United States House? That's a good question for our listeners to ask.
And very simply, people should also be calling John Boehner's office, in addition to their own member of Congress.
Exactly.
And say, whether it passes or fails in the House, at least give it a vote.
Right. But
at least, of course, it'll pass, but which is why John Boehner refuses to bring it to the floor for a vote.
Right. The Hastert rule, which he had to break to
it's not
stop
even the Hastert rule. I mean, the Hastert rule said you've got to have a majority of your caucus in favor of something. The Boehner rule is you have to have 100% of your caucus, or you have to be able to pass something, which is the entire caucus minus 15 votes in order to pass.
The Boehner rule is stroke the Tea Party as long as you can to stay in office.
Actually, the Boehner rule is meet me at the bar at 4.
Bring your golf clubs. I got to get out of this town.
And a gin and tonic and a bag of Marlboros.
But Jeff Merkley, in addition to ENDA, of course, is a great progressive who stood up for so many things, including reforming the filibuster.
People can find all
re-elect him next year.
About it at carlwolfson.com. There you go, Carl Wolfson. Hang on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
That's Carl, C-A-R-L, Wolfson, WOLFSON.com.
That's it.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Tom.